This really nailed it for me in the Politico Playbook newsletter this morning. It says, new House rules. Welcome to coalition government.
Welcome to coalition government. Thank you, Amanda.
Like, Tim Miller has called that shot. This is the Tim Miller thesis coming to light because it is the obvious conclusion. It is the only way to go forward. And if Mike Johnson wants to say, well, I did it because of what I saw in the skiff, even though anybody can turn on the news and listen to any speech by Zelensky to come to that conclusion, I guess I'll take it. But the only reasonable conclusion to come from this is that Tim Miller's right.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. I'm here today with Amanda Carpenter. She's back, editor at Protect Democracy, Renaissance woman at Protect Democracy, everything, democracy saver. What's going on, Amanda?
Not too much. Happy to be back. Happy Friday. How are you doing with the daily pods?
It's been going pretty good, I think. You know, we're trying to mix it up a little bit. And I do tell you, it's like every morning. There's no doubt about that. It happens every morning. So, you know, that's a little bit of a change.
Yeah, well, you have been mixing it up like the array of guests. I know it looks great on the outside, but I'm just wondering about you adjusting to daily grind. I listened to the commercials about you having to take things to counteract the drinks to get up in time
it's good.
to do the pod. So I'm just
different.
checking on you, Tim.
I do have a young child and a social life, and I will say I was going to mention this during we're doing a mailbag at the end so people can stay around. I was going to mention this in the mailbag segment, but since you asked me and I've taken over the host responsibilities, JazzFest is here the next 2 weeks. And so, yeah, if I'm going a little slow on Fridays, I ask people, I ask a little grace. All right. It's going to be a long year, a tough year. We got to fucking watch Donald Trump every day. And I live in New Orleans, so sometimes I'm going to have a few cocktails, but I am going to still effort to just strap it on, as JVL would say, the chin strap. We're talking about the chin strap, and put out a good podcast every day.
I'm with Sarah on the whole strap-on thing, but we'll
appreciate your concern, though. I appreciate your concern, and let me know if you feel like I'm falling short, people. I'm here for you. All right. Well, while we're having fun, Donald Trump was at trial. I want to hear a little bit from him after the court yesterday.
My T-shirt.
And it's a shame. It's a shame. And I'm sitting here for days now, from morning till night, in that freezing room, freezing. Everybody was freezing in there. And all for this.
It's so cold. Poor little Donnie's so cold in there. You might want to put on a sweater. What do you think? Do you feel bad? I noticed you're wearing some merch, actually. I noticed you're wearing some Bulwark merch. Never Trump from the jump. Everybody go to the Bulwark.com, click on store. You can look like Amanda. What do you think about poor cold Donnie in trial yesterday?
I was thinking of the Beyonce song, This Ain't Texas, but This Ain't Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. I mean, you can't control the temperature in the courtroom. Yes, it's very difficult. But more broadly, I understand a lot of people have hang-ups about how the trial is going, what's going to happen, etc. It is still extremely productive and healthy for us at this stage, even if he gets off and everything, that he has to show up. He is showing up. He does have to do as the judge says. He can't control the circumstances. Yeah.
You're not in charge, big guy.
He will be judged by a jury of his peers. Those aren't his sycophants, his political appointees, his fanboys at Fox News. They're New Yorkers, right? Like, even though you're a former president, you are going to be judged by New Yorkers who were pulled in at random because those are actually your peers. And so, I don't know, I get a little like, yay America watching this because it shows that even though we have a lot ahead of us, the rule of law is holding. We do have systems designed to do this. I mean, we've tried mob bosses, all kinds of things before. We can do this. We can do this, people. And we're going to go through the process. And that's very, very healthy.
New Yorkers are spicy too. The jury selection has been fun. I keep coming up to that word, the cold salad where it's all mixed together, the salmagundi. I'm like, it's like just the whole human experience. You got everybody. You got the deviled egg in there, and you got the cold pasta, and you got the guy in the T-shirt that says sarcasm font. It's just like it's a weird crowd, and Trump's gonna have to deal with it. That was a good. On the more serious side of this, or earnest, maybe less than serious, Crystal and Egger wrote this morning that, like, we're in this situation where there are more than 12. It is now settled on 12, but there were dozens of people that are trying to do their best, that are trying to live up to the expectations of a country with a rule of law. There's a judge that's trying to do that. There are lawyers, and there's just one asshole that's trying to break all the rules and wants to be treated differently and wants to be treated specially, and that we continually have to rein him in. And it's just unfortunate that is the person that is the former president of the United States.
Yeah.
We got some good people in there though, which I like. Okay, we'll see how it goes there. Oh wait, I want to quote your boss, I guess, Ian Basson over there at Protect Democracy. We love to protect democracy. This is what he wrote about this. There isn't another defendant in the country who could thumb their nose at pretrial conditions of release the way Trump has and remain walking free. Not one. Trump has been given special treatment that no one else would get. If you'd done what Trump has done, you'd be in jail. We all know that listening to the Bulwark podcast, but I like that he said that so bluntly. And I think that's important to continue to say, because I think there are a lot of normies out there that, haven't ever been arrested, don't know how the process is supposed to work, who maybe are buying his thing that he's getting treated badly when that's just not right.
Yeah, I mean, this has kind of been his thing too. It's like, oh, well, they're violating my constitutional rights, and that I can't threaten and intimidate jurors, witnesses, prosecutors, and judges, and their family members, right? Like that's another big aspect of this. But yeah, there's another. If people want to go deeper on this, there was a really good piece in Politico from their legal affairs editor talking about all the special treatment that he's gotten through this process. And I do think people are sort of reflexively, they don't like the idea of gag orders because it's like, well, he should be able to defend himself. Right. But I wrote a piece for our Protect Democracy Substack called If You Can Keep It, subscribe to it, talking about how, the really
little
big
Ben Franklin call back there. Little Ben Franklin.
Yeah. Isn't that cute? I was a little unsure about it first, but it has grown on me. And I now really do like the name, If You Can Keep It. But the threat that underscores not just this hush money trial, but all the trials is how he tries to continually destabilize our institutions of accountability with threats and intimidation, right? And that spurs people to violence. And it's all for the purpose of obstructing legal proceedings. We saw this on January 6th. We see how he tries to undo accountability for that riot by promising pardons. And now we see how he's trying to intimidate the process in these trials. And there's a reason why not just the judge in this trial, but judges in other trials, and even Eileen Cannon has had to speak to the fact that Donald Trump's rhetoric does pose a threat to the process. That is the reason why we have the gag orders. You are not allowed to interrupt the proceedings in this way, and that's so you can protect it. And we have to have that kind of protection, because if a judge or witnesses or members of the jury are afraid to do their job, the whole institution falls apart. It is just like we kind of saw Congress fall apart in the second impeachment, where members of Congress were afraid to impeach the president because of threat of violence. And so you see this coming at it from all angles. And I do think it is hard to track, because we look at like, oh, okay, this is the hush money trial, and this is the this, and this is the that. This is the big thing swirling around all of it, about how he wants to destabilize our institutions with threats of violence. And so I just want people to keep that in their head. And that is what the gag orders are designed to protect. And that is why the gag orders must be enforced.
Amen. And much better put than I've been putting it on here. So I'll just leave you and Ian on that one. You also, I was going to get to this later, but you mentioned the promising of the pardon. So let's just get right to it. You wrote for the Bulwark this morning with Grant Tudor, your colleague at Protect Democracy. Trump is wrong. The pardon power is not absolute. I think it's interesting. A lot of what you guys are doing at Protect Democracy is kind of looking around corners, potential threats. Nobody wants to close their eyes and imagine that Donald Trump's the president again, but somebody's got to be prepping for that in case that happens. Talk to us about this element of it, because I've always thought that, to me, it's underappreciated, like the potential danger of just the specter of pardons that Trump puts forth, that would that makes people feel like they can act with immunity. And, I think that'd be very scary in the process of people who are bureaucrats, of course, but it's also, who have the power of the state behind them. It's also very scary just in the concept of like the Jan 6 folks and like that people that are doing political violence might feel like, even if they don't actually, they might feel like they're going to get pardoned. So anyway, talk about the limits of the pardon power and the kind of work you guys are doing on that.
Yeah, well, just to kind of level set, this is where we see an area of concern for a possible Trump 2.0, but just generally as well, in the fact that people sort of implicitly accept the idea that the pardon power is unfettered. And that is largely because presidents have policed themselves within constitutional constraints. Sure, you did see like pardons like Bill Clinton got accused of a quid pro quo with Mark Rich, and then, Congress did an investigation. Trump got away with a lot of pardon abuse in the end of his first term. I don't know if you remember, like he was issuing pardons for Jeanine Pirro's ex-husband. He had what I call henchman pardons that were in the full light of day for Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, Mike Flynn, etc.
And so Paul Manafort pardon was literally treasonous. I wrote I think that was the headline I wrote. I either wrote treasonous or traitorous. There's just no way to put any better spin on it than that. It was absolutely disgusting, but it was in that period of time where there's so much happening, like the news cycle just moves on.
Yeah, those henchman pardons in those veins for those allies affiliated with the Russia investigation were pretty much for the purpose of obstructing justice, like saying, don't break. I don't want you to break, hold strong. And then voila, you get a pardon later. Okay. So going forward, he will be, if he's elected, even right now, he's the only person in the position to even test the idea of a self-pardon, because we haven't had presidents accused of criminality in not one, but numerous courts around the country. So we do have to think very seriously about this. And he said before, I do think it's absolute and complete, essentially saying, I think I can do whatever you want. And you even see some constitutional scholars kind of like agree with him. But that is largely rested on the idea that it hasn't been tested yet. Like just because the idea hasn't been tested or the Supreme Court hasn't like made a decision on the self-pardon doesn't mean it's unconstitutional. Somebody like pushed back on me on Twitter about this today. It's like, listen, like I haven't jumped off a building, but I know I can't fly. Right. And that is because the Constitution, you can't pick and choose parts of it, right? Like you have to read it as a whole document. And you can't let the 20-word pardon clause be a free pass to run roughshod over the rest of the Constitution. Like we didn't break apart from the English monarchy so a future president could be like, oh, pardon clause, and now I can be a tyrant again and self-pardon myself and reward criminality in any way I see fit. That is not what it's for. It has constraints, and that constraint is you cannot use the pardon power to violate other clauses of the Constitution. Lots of other things like are read like that, like the Commerce Clause. Congress has the ability to regulate commerce, but they can't say like, oh, I don't like this paper run by a black editor for these issues. Therefore, you can't ship it across state lines. That's just not how it works. And so in this paper that we published on Bulwark, which is based on a larger report that my much smarter than me colleague Grant Tudor and Justin Florence did, talks about the 4 constitutional constraints and the way that we see this should not be used if it ever did come up, primarily to place the president above the law, but then also to license lawbreaking, which is clearly what the January 6 pardons would do in rewarding that kind of political violence to advance the president's aim. So there's ways to go deeper on that, but like this is part of getting ahead of that question. Should it come up? We need to test the idea that it is unfettered, because it absolutely is not. The court has ruled, put restrictions on it in the past. Congress has investigated it. So I just want people to become familiar with the idea that it is not absolute.
Yeah, it's good. The one thing that jumped out at me in the piece was in some way, this is not untested, right? The Supreme Court has put limits on presidential pardons before. Yeah. It's kind of a complicated case. There's an example that you give of where essentially it seems like Woodrow Wilson was trying to pardon a newspaper editor, so that they preemptively, so that they would testify, and essentially that the court held that the power of the president of the Constitution to grant pardons, but does not also compel change the Fifth Amendment right of a witness, right, to not testify against. I assume it was against the president in this case, but so anyway,
I would say,
go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing that is not tested is the self-pardon.
The self-pardon, right.
Yeah, that's like where people
Well,
are
we
like,
haven't had
we
any
don't know what
presidents
would
trying that.
happen. Like,
Yeah.
you might be allowed to do it because we have a president do before. No, like let's read the Constitution as it is written. I think any reasonable person can come to the conclusion that a self-pardon to violate other clauses of the Constitution would not be constitutional. That's all.
Amen. I love that. Okay, I'm glad that we got that's getting out there into the bloodstream.
Again, we're getting wonky on Friday morning.
We're getting wonky. We're starting with wonky because trust me, we've got some dessert coming. We got some dessert. All right. But before we get to the dessert, I guess we have to compliment Mike Johnson again after the second straight podcast. I'm okay with it. Will Salatin and I went deep yesterday on just, kind of the Augustinian moral questions about you deal with a sinner who does the right thing, who comes to the Lord. So anyway, we've had a rules committee vote pass since we met yesterday, 9-3. All the Democrats voting with I guess a bare majority of the Republicans. 3 voted against the rule to advance this package of aid bills and then the weird TikTok fourth grab bag to the floor. Now that's got to pass a rules vote on the floor, but it seems like it's going to. There's some Republican Twitter back and forth this morning between the various you love Republican on Republican infighting. It was like I love crazy on crazy infighting, especially. It was like Derek and Van Orden was shouting at Matt Gaetz on Twitter. I'm like, all right, we're in business now. So anyway, there's some frustration within the Republican conference, but it's going to come up for a vote. Hasn't happened yet. We're taping this Friday morning, but it seems like we're on path to this passing. And it's just, I guess my questions for you is, number one, is this, how many cheers do we give Mike Johnson for this? And 2, is this the growing on the job everybody told us that Trump was going to do? But like, it turned out Mike Johnson did it. Like, you can be irresponsible and you have a childish job as a backbench congressman, but all of a sudden you're in a skiff and you're seeing video of Ukraine get attacked and you get serious. Is that, do you think, what happened here?
I am not prepared to say that Mike Johnson has turned a corner and has seen the light. What I am prepared to do is say that Tim Miller was right. And I've kind of been screaming this in my head as I've seen this kind of come together. But this really nailed it for me in the Politico Playbook newsletter this morning. It says, new House rules. Welcome to coalition government.
Welcome to coalition government. Thank you, Amanda.
Like, Tim Miller has called that shot. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but like this is the Tim Miller thesis coming to light because it is the obvious conclusion. It is the only way to go forward. And if Mike Johnson wants to say, well, I did it because what I saw in the skiff, even though anybody can turn on the news and listen to any speech by Zelensky to come to that conclusion, I guess I'll take it. But the only reasonable conclusion to come from this is that Tim Miller's right.
Thank you. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was just checking Joe Strauss, the Texas speaker, who I hope listens because he should, because he's just like a core Bulwark Republican, ended up as a literal coalition speaker because the Republicans couldn't get their shit together in Texas, and so he won the speakership with the votes of some Republicans and some Democrats in Texas. We had an article about in the Bulwark. I recruited a Texas journalist to write for us about what the model would look like for Congress, and that would have been better, like a literal coalition government where like Brian Fitzpatrick or Don Bacon was the speaker. Like, these people aren't perfect, but it would have been preferable to Mike Johnson, and we would have had Ukraine aid many months ago instead of now. But an unofficial coalition government where the Democrats kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, and say, hey, we'll save you, Mike Johnson, is better than the alternative, and that's like where we're at.
Walks like a duck, talks like a duck. They won't say I'm a duck. But you're a duck.
It's a coalition government. It's a coalition government duck. That's exactly right. Me and Gates have been going back and forth on this on Twitter this morning a little bit. And because my point going back was that it had Kevin McCarthy, that just gutless, blow-dried piece of garbage. You're talking
about Donald Trump's future chief of staff there, Tim.
Or maybe VP. He floated himself for VP in the New York Times. I don't know if you noticed that. The New York Times was doing a story on VPs. I wish I had it in front of me.
Well, since RFK turned it down. RFK turned it down, so Kevin McCarthy
jumped the New York Times was doing this story. Mike Bender is a great reporter. He's doing this story on the categories of people that Trump's looking at for VP. And weirdly, Kevin McCarthy is on the record quoted in it And we'll put the link in the show notes so you can see the exact quote. But like his quote is like, Donald Trump really needs somebody that he knows is loyal, that has experience working the halls of Congress, that can get his agenda passed. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is this Kevin nominating himself for VP? I think it was.
I mean, I guess he has experience getting fired by Trump before.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
He's qualified for the job.
On the job experience. Anyway,
he knows how to pick out the starburst.
Had he just, I know, it's like none of the National Review people, none of these people will listen to me. They'll all be like, "Oh, you guys have TDS. This would never happen." Had Kevin McCarthy just listened to us and gone to a few normal Democrats and said, "Hey guys, I know you're mad at me, but let's cut a deal. Da 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 da. We're gonna do this. You guys get this. I get this." He would still be speaker, and the Republicans would still have a bigger majority because that motion to vacate was only powerful if the Democrats were going to vote against him, right? Matt Gaetz only had 9 people.
As I remember, the Democrats were not willing to entertain that because of what he did about January 6th.
And so maybe it never would have happened. But I just think if there's a hypothetical world where Kevin humbled himself.
Yeah, he didn't try.
He didn't try. Had he humbled himself and went to Hakeem Jeffries instead of just instead of going on TV and dunking on Democrats and blaming Democrats, saying, "Oh, the Democrats are going to put a crazier person in." Remember that argument? And like we got chastised by people on right wingers who were like, "You guys are Democrats. You're going to put a crazier person in because of Kevin McCarthy because you have so much TDS." It's like, look what happened. The Democrats did it. They got rid of Kevin McCarthy. They got a person that's maybe crazier and is like, if you're going down a checklist of views, but it's turned out to be more responsible. But it's turned out to be more responsible with Kevin McCarthy. So it ends up being a good trade for everybody. Good.
Fingers crossed. It hasn't happened.
Crossed. You're right. We're knocking. We're knocking on wood here.
Just get that money to Ukraine.
We're knocking aggressively.
Get it done.
There's one topic I didn't prepare you for because I thought it'd be funnier to see you live. I hope you haven't seen this. Politico was reporting on this yesterday. Olivia Beavers, good reporter. This is what's happening with the House Freedom Caucus right now because they're in such shambles. House Freedom Caucus members are signing up to take shifts to guard the House floor in order to prevent resolutions they'd consider unsavory from slipping through that could curb their power under this new rule, per 2 sources. This floor action response team aims to guard against a voice voter, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to note, Floor Action Response Team. That's an interesting acronym. Floor Action Response Team.
Okay.
It's the fart team. The House Freedom Caucus has put the House Freedom Caucus has created a fart team to try to stop the Democrats and Mike Johnson for doing anything they don't like. Good. So, thoughts on that, Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of what we would do in DeMint's office. I mean, it's sort of a function of what was called the Senate Steering Committee, but there would be somebody that would police, or I don't want to say police, but monitor the phone line that bills would go to the floor at all hours after they went, on weekends and things like that to make sure that nothing would be called up for unanimous consent and be passed. So that is that seems kind of familiar to me, although they could work on their messaging. Yeah.
You're not going to take the bait on the stink bomb on Paul Gosar putting a stink bomb on the House floor. You're not going to take any bait on that. You're just going to. YouTube viewers of the podcast might want to see Amanda's visual reaction, but you're being very responsible as a mother in your words.
Well, I had in my head, I thought it was going to be, wasn't it the tweet from Sean Davis essentially saying the real nuclear option is for more Republicans to resign so that the House is deadlocked and nothing can happen from here on out. And it was resign your job to own the libs.
Please own us.
Please go for that. Please do that. We would get a better coalition government in the House side. It's just okay, do that. Please do that. Take Sean Davis's advice. That would be wonderful. Go forward. Yeah.
Sean Davis theory is that if the exact number of Republicans resign to make it even Republicans versus Democrats, then you can't elect a speaker. Who the fuck? These people are lunatics. Okay, but please resign to own me. All right. Do we want to do happy or sad first? We're gonna look at a couple of comments yesterday from former Trump cabinet officials. Do you want happy first or sad first?
I mean, let's get the sad first so we can go on.
Okay, let's get it out of the way. Let's Jason, let's hear from Bill Barr.
And I also know you've been asked many times, you've had your disagreements with the former president. He's the presumptive nominee. We assume he will be the nominee. Will you support him in 2024?
Well, I've said all along, given two bad choices, I think it's my duty to pick the person I think would do the least harm to the country. And in my mind, that's I will vote the Republican ticket.
You
I
will
will support the Republican ticket. I think the real danger to the country, the real danger to democracy, as I say, is the progressive agenda. And while Trump, and I said, Trump may be playing Russian roulette, but continuation of the Biden administration is national suicide, in my opinion.
Oh. F you, Bill Barr. Ugh. I have some thoughts on Bill Barr, but Amanda, I want you to have the floor first.
I mean, I guess he's consistent, right? I mean, he's
Consistently
kind
awful.
of like maintained this. There's this continuing idea, even echoed by George Will in the Washington Post, talking about how, well, Trump and Biden are both equally bad. And actually, if you really look at it, Biden is kind of worse. Please point me to an instance where Joe Biden has asked the Justice Department to seize voting machines and rerun an election where Joe Biden is accused of criminality in multiple jurisdictions. You can get away with saying this on Fox. I don't know. Was this Fox Daytime? I don't know where.
Was Fox Daytime. Yeah, Fox Afternoon.
Sounds about right. You get no pushback. You have to do
you got
no
Bill
serious
Hemmer. Bill Hemmer's like,
inflection.
you got some disagreements. Disagreements is an interesting word for it. I mean, Bill Barr did say that he thinks that Donald Trump has a credible criminal case against him for mishandling classified information, that he lied to the country, and that his lies caused the storming of the Capitol. You could call those disagreements, I guess. It seems a little bit understated for what was his actual criticisms. I mean,
I would like to see just a little bit of not even pushback, but hey, Bill Barr, could you tell me more about how you think the progressive agenda is suicide? Like, what part of it? Is it the CRT in classrooms that you don't like? Is it the book that you're afraid a kid might read? Like, what part of it makes it national suicide? I mean, because it just sounds so like absurd on its face. I mean, Green New Deal is because some protesters accosted Lisa Murkowski, which was bad the other day. I don't know if you saw that. That was just really gross. Those people are disgusting. Yeah. I mean, take a shot at that, but that's not national suicide.
Yeah, well, how does a suicide look? Can you just paint it out? Like what's going to happen by 2028? Like what's going to happen with the country? Is Antifa going to take over? I just what is the hypothetical suicide? Bill Barr lives in McLean in a beautiful house. He's got a good life. I just what is happening? His tax rates aren't really particularly high. The U.S. economy is doing better than its global competitors. In the West, I just what's this? There's not immigrants storming McLean right now, and there are problems for sure. But suicide. I want to mention one other thing.
Although I gotta say, it's just, it's not funny,
Please.
But he says Donald Trump is Russian roulette.
Interesting choice of
it's
words.
Roulette
there.
versus suicide, and you decide to I guess he'd rather do it to himself than it's just. I don't.
Yes. It's also kind of maybe you should play Russian roulette if you feel that way. I also Russian roulette makes it seem like it's not that serious, but it's kind of I'd like to see Bill Barr give Russian roulette a try, and see if he actually would pull the trigger. I think
do you
probably
mean that
not.
metaphorically?
No. I think no. My point is I don't want him to kill himself. I think my point is that would he actually pull the trigger? I think probably not. Right. So he's saying that he's going to vote for Donald Trump and that's Russian roulette. But the metaphor doesn't really work, because if I handed Bill Barr a gun and put a bullet in one of the chambers and spun it and then handed it to him and put it up to his head and said, will you pull the trigger right now? Or else your other option is Joe Biden being president for 4 years. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
we see. It'd be an interesting. If Bill Barr has any friends listening, we can try it. That'd be great content.
No. It is irresponsible for Bill Barr to say, because no one is playing that game.
Right. Exactly.
That is not a good metaphor, because it doesn't come even close to being analogous to the situation that we're in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, in some ways, it kind of does, because it's if I thought that Donald Trump was Russian roulette, I would not do it, because I would not play Russian roulette. I guess that's my point. I would not vote for somebody that I thought was Russian roulette, because I wouldn't play Russian roulette. I want to read one more thing about Bill Barr. I think it's gotten missed, because I hadn't seen it. Former Attorney General Bill Barr will help lead a new group formed by a business lobbying organization that aims to be an alternative to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the massive advocacy group that has fallen out of favor with some Republicans. So I think we know what he really means here.
Yeah.
He's got some big conservative business leaders that are unhappy that the Chamber of Commerce has not gone full MAGA. And so he's now getting paid to lead a lobbying organization that is like to the right of the Chamber of Commerce. And so he needs to represent the interests of those people. That's what's actually happening here.
Okay, so Bill Barr will play Russian roulette because he wants to form a new Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, and doesn't want
that's what brings him to the table for this game.
Cuts. Yeah.
Doesn't sound that brilliant and smart to me for a guy has such a fine pedigree.
It's pretty sick. Okay. Mark Esper. We'll start to uplift the spirits a little bit. Actually, maybe we'll wait for Mark Esper while we're down here in the muck. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is last time you were on, we talked a little bit about Project 2025 and kind of the broader concerns about that. And, I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. Just particularly, with regards to kind of what you guys are preparing for and threat assessment. And we were talking about a little bit about this before. So let's talk about that. And then we'll get into Mark Esper, because I think it's very related.
Yeah, I guess, well, just more broadly, when I look online and I hear, you see some of the chatter and what's in the air, a lot of people view Project 2025 as this existential threat. I prefer, and the approach I've taken at Protect Democracy in our report about the Authoritarian Playbook 2025 is not to look solely at that document produced by Heritage. What is most concerning is where that document has the Venn diagram with the Trump agenda, and the middle part where the conservative movement and Republican Party is largely coalescing in authoritarian ways. And that is broadly what Project 2025 is espousing through all the different policies, is that they want a really powerful executive, right? They want the president to be able to enact his agenda throughout the federal government, and think that loyalists should be installed at every level so that there's no one essentially that says no to the president's agenda. Like that's the thing emanating from all of this. And so whether you look at their proposals for the Department of Justice or the Department of Education or the Health and Human Services, that is what it gets at. And there's many areas of overlap, in particular regarding the Department of Justice, in which they think they have language in there that speaks to how a president should be able to communicate to the prosecutors and stuff. There shouldn't be firewalls of communication to protect judicial independence. They want to do away with that. And when you see Donald Trump take that policy to the logical extension, he's talking about how, okay, I'm going to weaponize the department to go after my political enemies. So you kind of have the smarty tart Heritage people talking about, like, oh, on a policy level, we think this should change. And then you have Donald Trump on the campaign trail saying, this is how I would use those changes to go after my enemies. And so the way that Donald Trump gets away with this stuff is that a bunch of people in the news look at Project 2025 and they say, oh, this is bad, this is what we're going to do. And he goes, well, I didn't say that. Right. Meanwhile, on Agenda 47, which is his actual campaign platform, in his words, written, printed, scripted out in campaign speeches, he is telling you exactly how he will do that. And so I just like the emphasis to be on what he is promising to do, which is what we did with the Authoritarian Playbook, 2025.org. You can go find it, where it shows how these things marry together to how he would abuse his powers as president in 2025 to enact the authoritarian agenda that Heritage buys into now and is laid out in their own 900-page document. So don't go through all that. Just read what I put together, and keep in mind the big idea here is they want the president to do whatever he wants. Article 2 power, whatever I want. That's basically what they're saying. This
is the key part, and we got into this a little bit with Ross on Tuesday, which was like, his argument was, well, you guys, your case against Trump is resting on the theory that the people around him will be different next time, and that it will be worse next time, right? Because it won't be the same. And my point is like, well, yeah, obviously they're saying that it will be different next time. They are saying, I'm not saying it. It's not TDS. And I think this is, I'm glad you kind of put a finer point on this, right? Because it's like, they are specifically saying we are, the whole objective here is to install people throughout the bureaucracy that are not going to put brakes on Trump because he had too many brakes put on him last time. That's what they're saying. right? And so there's reason to believe, when you combine that with the other knowledge about the fact that he's not going to have people like Mark Esper around next time, where it's pretty obvious, like the difference and the nature of the threat.
Yeah, and it's kind of a 1-2 punch, right? Like, there's been a lot of tension on Schedule F, which was his executive order that he tried to put into place in October 2020, but didn't have time to go into action. It was essentially reclassify federal employees so that he had the ability to fire more of them. So he's already promised, like, yeah, we're definitely doing that on steroids as much as we can on day one of my next administration. But you couple that with the fact that he's ousting people, number one, and then Heritage has this massive job bank to screen people for ideological purity, commitment to enacting the president's agenda first, unfailingly. And then that's who's coming in to do it. And then, on a policy level, they really want these monitors essentially accountable or who answer to the president at every level. And we're not just talking Department of Justice. You're talking places like EPA,
Homeland Security,
federal imagine that in every department. I mean, you saw the craziness with the Weather Service in his first administration, where they wanted to alter the maps potentially with the Sharpie so it'd help him politically. We saw this pushing this to some degree with the FDA, with the vaccine approval and games that they played with that. And so you don't want all this to become so politicized, but that is the goal, so that they can use leverage in any way possible. And just to put this in the authoritarian context, the reason why this becomes so dangerous is that once an executive like this consolidates all this power, right? Like, you have all your appointees, you're pushing your agenda, regulatory retaliation, all this stuff, you can't give it up. You can't allow your enemy to win, because once they take that power, they're probably going to hold you accountable, right? And so that is why authoritarians never leave. That's why you see someone like Putin who's never going to leave office. You see Orban win again and again. And it's just that's how it works. And it's so plainly obvious when you study how authoritarians come to power and how they stay there and why. Whether he knows it or not, he's following that playbook.
Indeed. All right, let's Bill Kristol had a very long conversation with Mark Esper. So folks can listen to that over at Conversations with Bill Kristol. We'll put the link in. I want to play one clip from it and talk a little bit about somebody who's, maybe not getting an A+ on the report card, but doing a lot better than Bill Barr. Here's Mark Esper talking about the letter that he signed with all of the living secretaries of defense in both parties in 2020.
It's kind of what brought us together, particularly as we saw as things unfolded and as the election denialism continued. There was a growing concern that would the military get involved? And we all know now that there was that meeting in late December with, I think maybe it was Mike Flynn and others, who said, yeah, maybe we should send the military in to seize ballot boxes or to conduct another election. I can't recall the details, but it was quite alarming that, the military would be put in that context. I was concerned going into the fall that the military would be used at the time of the election, when the results were revealed, to put down protests, to do other things. And so that became more of my concern, immediate concern at that point in time. And of course, I don't think anybody envisioned that the weeks and months after November 2020 would happen the way they did. I mean, in my lifetime, if you had told me 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago that there would be an insurrection on Capitol Hill and people would storm the Capitol and try and seize ballot boxes and threaten to hang Mike Pence, the vice president, it would be like a bad Hollywood movie, right? But it was real, and it should be a wake-up call for all of us.
It should be a wake-up call. Refreshing just to hear somebody, like, I know that it's kind of a low bar just to say the truth, but like, he's saying the truth about what happened. He's doing the natural follow-up to that, which is not supporting Donald Trump, given the nature of the threat. What do you think about Mark Esper and what we've been hearing from him?
Yeah, this is good. He seems primarily focused on Trump's potential abuse of the Insurrection Act, which he was on record at the time. He spoke out in real time against it. He got fired for it. So that's good. I'm glad he's doing these interviews. That said, he kind of is in the news a little bit more recently for reasons I don't like. And that's because there was a letter recently signed by another letter, not the letter he signed in 2020, a letter that was released this week from a lot of military officials to the Supreme Court, explaining why Trump should not have total immunity, which is another case that Trump is taking to the Supreme Court. This is the other thing that's advancing next week, where he wants total immunity for any alleged potential crimes he committed as president. And so, it was really good that those military officials, which include, I got to look on here, it's people like Mike Hayden, et cetera, other retired generals, saying, like, this is dangerous for the country. And they're primarily really good messengers for this because they're members of the military are in position to execute these unlawful acts potentially on behalf of a president. When that example came of, well, could the president order SEAL Team 6 to execute his enemies? And they're essentially like, yeah. Guess who's going to be ordered to do that in that potential scenario? So you absolutely need officials to speak out. And it's good they did so. But Mark Esper was asked about that letter last week. And he essentially said, I don't think they should be weighing in on this. I don't understand this. That's his right, if that's really his opinion, but I think he should be pressed on it a little bit more, because I think if he engaged in some more reflection and study of this issue, he could get to the right place. And I understand, like, it's an uncomfortable place for, chain of command to be speaking out against a president, but you're not serving him anymore.
Right.
The military should not be abused in this fashion. Members of the military should be able to say so and not be put in an uncomfortable position. So I would like him to get on the right side of that issue, because if you're worried about abuse of the Insurrection Act and you're willing to speak out against that, you should be willing to take a position on why the president shouldn't have total immunity for crimes he commits as president.
I concur with that, but I guess I'll say this. If Mark Esper just has a principled view on this, been inside the bill, been inside the Pentagon, said that these folks doesn't believe that military officials should be speaking out. Okay, well, he is a civilian. I'm glad he's speaking out now, and he's going to have to be their megaphone this year. And I'm glad he's on Conversations with Bill Kristol. I hope he supports Joe Biden for president. We'll see. I'd like to see him at the convention. And if not, I'd like to see him in some other venue, paid TV ad, something, using his voice as a civilian leader of the military and somebody that saw Donald Trump up close and personal. And he might do that. I hope he does continue to do that. Now, this is a note of encouragement on that front.
Yeah, when you say speak at the convention, because I think we actually disagree on this one, and that people in his position should be platformed by the Democratic Party to advocate for Biden. I don't think that, people like Chris Christie, if people are not comfortable doing so, they're not Democrats. I mean, just they don't even have to say I'm voting for Biden necessarily, but a blanket statement saying, like, I think these things are disqualifying. I don't know who's going to be on the ballot or whatever, but I am going to vote against Trump because he's disqualified. I think that would be sufficient, but maybe we disagree.
I don't know if we strongly disagree, and maybe I'm just in West Wing world, but I'm fine with all that. It's good. Anything is better than nothing. In my head, I just think about my goosebumps when I'm going to be nervous in October. October chill is going to be coming out. And it'd feel nice to see Mark Esper come out on stage in Pittsburgh and just be like, we cannot do this. I saw it up close. It's too dangerous. I'm going to vote for Davos Dave McCormick or whatever. He doesn't even live in Pennsylvania, but so he wouldn't say that. But, I'm still a Republican. I'm going to be for a Republican next time, but we got to be for Joe Biden. The country demands it. Country over party, blah, blah, blah. That just would be nice. I don't know. If one person did that, it would just give me the tingles. Would it actually matter? I think it would. I do think it would matter. I'm not going to malign Mark Esper if he doesn't do it, though. I guess I'll say.
Yeah, I will. So if he says a letter to the Supreme Court by former officials is a bad idea, though, because I think he's wrong on that.
Okay, Mark Esper. Listen to the whole conversation with Bill Kristol. Better than nothing. Glad he's out there. We're going to come back on the other side. We're doing a mailbag. I'm keeping Amanda. Amanda's doing the mailbag, too. We'll see you in a second. Hey, JVL, it's been months since I've seen you without a screen intermediary. I'm just dying to lick your face and put my hands on you. And so are you going to come do some public events with us and be among the people?
Human contact? Yes. Yes, I'm going to do it. I'm coming out of the house. I'm leaving the basement for 2 days. May 1st in Philadelphia and May 15th in Washington, D.C.
This will be the first Bulwark event where we encourage jeering because it's Philly, people, so jeer us.
Yes.
May 1st.
If we have a bad show, I expect the Philly crowd to boo us.
Please. Or anyway, even if it's a good show, boo us anyway. We deserve it. May 1st in Philly, May 15th, 6 and I Synagogue in Washington, D.C. Come hang out. Go to thebulwark.com/events to get your tickets. Thebulwark.com/events. And JVL, I just can't wait to get all up on you. All right, it's Friday. And by the way, I had a very unsubtle play-out song for Amanda last time. This time I have a medley of unsubtle play-out songs for her. Both of them, it's going to be our first medley. Both of them will be on the Spotify playlist, which is in the show notes every Friday. People who ask, where can I find the songs? Playlist is in the show notes. All right.
Thank you for that. Just because I'm telling you again, I listen to you when I'm on my runs. And so I let it play out all the way to the end of the songs. And I really like it because I get new recs. And so I love it.
Jason is enjoying it. Okay, mailbag. We'll be serious first. It's kind of serious. Clint and many people ask this. Clinton, Virginia, Martin, James, all asked basically a similar question. I'm going to read Clint's. What about Biden promising to appoint sane Republicans to his administration? Haley back to the UN ambassador, Liz Cheney as Secretary of Ag or Interior. Biden has common ground with some of these people, and these are unprecedented times that require whatever it takes. Several people suggested Secretary of State even for Haley and Cheney. Amanda, what say you?
Yeah, well, you can't really promise positions to people during a campaign, but do it now. I would love that. I mean, I think that there's a lot of places where someone like a Cheney, et cetera, have experience that can be used that aren't necessarily going to interfere with his Democratic agenda. I think that would be fabulous, don't you? Because if you're going to say, like, what I don't like, again, revisiting the whole, like, should Republicans become Democrats? I don't like it when his campaign says, okay, hey, Republicans, there's a place in my campaign for you. Like, you don't want to be used as political pawns. Like, just make room and say, hey, you're welcome here. I don't like it when he takes it to a political place when it could just be like, yeah, we're working together. If you could show, here's how I can work together with Republicans. Super duper do that.
Yeah. My thought on this is I have two parts. Number one, I just want, because I don't know how much this really would help. Right. And so I hate, like, there was a Politico article in 2020 where there's like some never Trumpers are grumbling that Joe Biden hasn't promised to put a Republican in the cabinet. And I'm like, I don't really like whether or not. I think that one of the examples that are floating was Meg Whitman could be Commerce Secretary. Meg Whitman being Commerce Secretary has literally zero bearing on whether I think that Joe Biden or Donald Trump should be the president, right? And I don't think it should have bearing on anyone else's view. As a signaling thing, I think picking somebody now and just being a little bit more proactive and demonstrating that this is a big coalition, a big tent, I think that could be a good PR move and a good signaling move. There are a lot of cabinet positions. I don't think the Secretary of State is right, by the way. I think Biden has enough problems on his left flank in Gaza right now. Anyway, I think Tony Blinken's doing a good job. And so, picking a neocon to be Secretary of State is kind of a ridiculous suggestion. But I think that, for one of these other positions, demonstrating that there's going to be somebody in the cabinet that is a former Republican. I mean, Jeff Flake's already in the administration. Move him from Turkey to somewhere, in the United States and do something with that.
Invisible, right? I mean, we haven't
put
heard
some of these
anything.
guys forward.
Yeah, I don't think any cabinet position is probably asking a lot, but there's a bazillion task forces and commissions and things like that. Get them involved. It'd be great.
More is more. Okay. Next question is from Ted. I will say we've had some good life advice questions. We've given such good life advice that somebody's moving to Door County, which we've mentioned several times.
You should have her on and let her know.
We should have her
just
on.
A little phone in. Have her phone in. Make it
Katie,
easy.
we should have a little phone in. Okay, but so I haven't gotten. I don't understand why more after listing just all the amazing advice we've given. We've not been flooded with life advice questions, but that's okay. We have a couple other funny questions anyway. Ted asked if you were on the board of the Trump Library. Which, would never happen, but okay, let's play along.
Please put me on that board.
Please.
Can I please?
Amanda's like, sign me up. Sign me up. I don't think you've done any vetting, but I'm ready. What exhibit would you create to bring renewed attention to a Trump event many Americans have seen to have memory hold? This is fun. Trump Library. Amanda, what would you do?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to imagine what the Trump Library would look like. I mean, I see that like the gift shop at Mar-a-Lago. But that's not actually true because I think they're administered by the National Archives. There's a nonprofit board that's set up. And actually the Nixon Library is a really good source of information post-Watergate. They house all the transcripts and things that have come out and other books. Like, there can be really, really good sources of information.
It's hard to see Trump going that route.
Yeah, I don't know how much control they have. Usually they raise money for it, and I think they have a hand in appointing the board. But after a period of time, like Q Hewitt was in charge or had some role at the Nixon Library at some point, which you can see how that happened. But later on, I think it becomes like kind of more serious, and you can go through all the materials. They're going to have all his like social media post archives. That's going to be a trip. But I am still dying to know what happened in Helsinki with what he told Putin and what the translator actually observed. I want a Helsinki like whole walk-in where you actually go through the press conference and they play the words and then you see what happened behind closed doors, because I think that is really impactful.
You'd hear the Russian and then you'd hear the translator.
That'd you can put on the headphones.
An audio experience.
Yeah, I want a Helsinki exhibit. I think informative in terms of what's going on with Ukraine. B, I want to know what happened. And C, the rest of everything would probably be so nuts. Can you imagine like someone going into that library and just walking through like a whole wall of tweets 30 years from now? Ugh. And all like just you'd be surrounded by it. He'd be like yelling at you. There should just be like some kind of audiovisual assault to recreate what it was like living through that in terms of being surrounded by Trump and not being able to get away from it. So that's my fun.
This sounds more like a haunted house than a library.
Yeah.
A little scary. Trump in his orange makeup jumps out at you and yells one of his tweets.
Okay, that's got to be part of it. His makeup kit.
Yeah, the makeup kit.
Because I want to know, like that's, yeah. So I want the makeup kit and one thing like where you can get ready as he does for an appearance. You put on the suit, his beauty uniform. That's what we call it.
It's giving me the
there's a beauty uniform where you wear the same thing every day. It's like the female version of Steve Jobs' turtleneck. So it would be his first outfit, the suit with the long tie and the padding and the heel, like whatever, the hairspray that he uses, the makeup. That'd be good. And then you can change into golf attire, which is the khakis, the polo shirt, the red hat. Yeah, that needs to be part of it.
The man's
to totally embrace
kind of a man's ear for his golf shirt. Yeah, I was thinking about a scare. Yeah, like the Seinfeld episode, the male. I know you don't do pop culture. It's like it's a male bra. They call it either a bro or a man's ear.
Spanx for men.
That's Spanx for men. You got to put that on. I got to say, I was thinking of what called to mind to me is all the times Trump has been scared. I just want to say, I don't think is this library ever going to happen? I don't know. It's kind of weird that Trump hasn't focused on it. A healthy narcissist, like if Trump wasn't a total sociopathic narcissist, if he was just a normal narcissist, he would have lost the election and then focused on building the biggest, gaudiest library ever, with the money that he stole from people over the years. And, it would be in South Florida and it would like look like the Taj Mahal and it would make me sick. But like at least that would have been a healthy channeling of narcissism. But instead of, trying a coup and running for president again. But anyway.
I don't think you can really make money off it. That's the problem. It's supposed to be run as a nonprofit and it's not really totally administered by you. But that said,
Since when has it been limited by norms before?
The campaign licensing deal where you have to kick up 5% to the big guy for every time you use his likeness on a mailer, which by the way, in West Virginia, that is all the direct mail that I get. My mailbox just stuffed full of people saying, I'm a Trump Republican. Like even the billboards that you see, there's a guy running for governor who's like this fighter and talks about how he's going to go punch people. It's got pictures of him ringside, but the billboard says Trump Republican in big letters before it even says his name down below.
So weird. I do have more West Virginia thoughts. We'll save it for your next time that you're on. My final thing on the Trump library, I want a scared corridor because all of my favorite Trump videos are like the one, like I mentioned the other day, the one where the eagle goes to bite him and he gets really scared and he jumps up when he's sitting at his desk. Okay, we'll put that. I have another big day for show notes. Katie, remind me. We got to put the Trump being scared montage, New York Times article, the Spotify playlist. The other one is when he's on stage. This is one of my favorites. and a protester jumps on the stage, which is a little scary. Okay.
Yep.
But it was just some liberal progressive, do-gooder protester, which you shouldn't do that. Okay.
No, don't do that.
Trump gets so freaked out. He like bends down like it's like a sniper is out to get him, and then they like storm him off, and then he runs off. And the next day he tries to tell people that they thought it was ISIS. They thought it was ISIS. It was
I
he
remember that.
He was like, "Oh, it was ISIS coming after me," and then they tried to advance that lie that it was ISIS when it really he just got scared by like some hippie tree hugger. Anyway, a scared Trump. That would give me a lot of joy. Amanda, do you have any final thoughts? I'm going to close with a final question that I don't. Do you have any? I assume you don't have any JazzFest recs.
I do not.
Okay. I'm going to close with some JazzFest recs. You just listen in, and then we'll let everybody go. All right, here's the question. Asa is headed to New Orleans. Good name. Asa Hutchinson are the best Republican candidate for president this year. Low bar. Asa, I'm headed to New Orleans for the second week of JazzFest. I'm curious if you have any can't miss event shows or bars. We'll also be taking our 3-year-old. Would love some insight as to recommendations for kids in New Orleans. All right, you guys mark this. I get a lot of New Orleans requests, grown-up requests, or grown-up recommendations. That is for JazzFest. I'm an uptown man. All right, so here's your uptown life. The Maple Leaf, Tipitinas. My buddies own Tipitinas. Rabbit Hole. That's more for hipsters. Le Bon Temps Roulette. It's a dive place. Those are all uptown. Look at their schedules. You can't go wrong. Same with the Toulouse Theater. Good name. In the French Quarter. For you, second week of JazzFest, I took a peek at Friday night. There's an Earth, Wind, Fire cover band at Republic. Boyfriend. She's awesome. She's doing Tina Turner at Tips. There's an LCD sound system drummer at Rabbit Hole. Tank and the Bangas are at Toulouse Theater. Amazing. All great options Friday night after the shows. Anything with my good friend Stanton Moore, friend of the pod, Stanton Moore. Look at his schedule. He's a drummer. Any late night brass band show, the TBC brass band's probably my favorite. I got to shout out Bulwark superfan Steve's Uptown Bar, the Kingpin. So you find yourself by Britannia and Napoleon Jefferson-ish, stop the Kingpin for a beer. Tell him I sent you. And if you got the kiddos in tow, Creole Creamery is the best ice cream in the South. That's around the corner. Other food, Lauzas. Am I saying that right? Lauzas. I'm struggling to learn all the New Orleans pronunciations of things. I'm just embracing being a transplant. Their barbecue shrimp is my favorite dish in town. Lauzas. It's right by where JazzFest is. Going to be a long line. It's worth it. Get out there either early or just have a beer and wait. Inside JazzFest, get the crawfish bread. It's back this year. Kids. The fest is great for kids. JazzFest is great for kids. Come next year if you're looking for somewhere to bring your kids. It's not like Coachella. All right, you get there early. Make sure you got your water and your sunscreen and that they're dressed for the heat. Toulouse wore a black jersey last year. She was not happy. So, make sure they're dressed for the heat. My other big kid advice, the aquarium and insectarium is right by the French Quarter. So, you as a parent, you can go get a little hurricane or a little hand grenade or a little adult beverage. Just walk it right over to the aquarium and insectarium. You're walking along the Mississippi River. You can look at the boats. 3-year-olds like big boats. Go in. You see the insects. They serve insect food. It's great. There's a butterfly room.
Right.
There's other stuff you can do for kids, but that's you can get those if you just Google it. Insectarium, aquarium, and French Quarter combo is a nice little day. Guys, those are my New Orleans recs. You're welcome. No charge. Straight from me. Thank you for listening to the Bulwark Podcast. Amanda, this has been so fun. When are you coming to New Orleans?
I'm going to go Google what a hand grenade is because I wasn't aware that's something you could drink. And I've never heard of an insectarium.
An insectarium.
That sounds interesting.
Would your kids like it, though? I bet they would.
Yeah, they'd probably be game. But I do think you need to organize some kind of a Bulwark bar crawl or family-friendly crawl event. Sometime, just putting that
Let's
out there.
Do it. Okay.
Be a lot of fun.
You let me know when you're going to be here. We can tell people, I can be like the Pied Piper. We can take people around. Everybody, I want you to have a wonderful weekend. On Monday, we've got something a little bit different for you. We'll have a little bit with Bill Kristol, but it's 25-year anniversary of Columbine tomorrow. I grew up right by Columbine, and so we're going to talk about that on Monday. So bear down for that. But in the meantime, I hope there's beautiful weather where you are. Enjoy your weekend. Amanda Carpenter, I love you. I appreciate you and hope to have you back again soon.
Great. Have a good weekend.
We'll see y'all on Monday. Peace.